Now that Nationals and DigiFest have come to a close, there's really only one question on everyone's mind. Is blue Bandai's favorite color? Well, speculation aside, these past weekend's results have kind of confirmed what many of us have begun to suspect, and it's that yellow hybrid, even though it was hyped coming into the format as the best deck, has actually shown up with some weaker results. And as it turns out, the blue hybrid deck is the real menace of the BT7 format. So, what happened to yellow then? Even though both blue and yellow got pretty even hits on the ban list with the reinforced memory boost and ice wall limits respectively, as well as the Mega Digimon Fusion ban affecting both decks equally because they lose access to the 2 memory Susanamon play. I think we're starting to see what the true ramifications of Bandai's ban list are. Although Yellow lost a powerful draw, heal, and memory gain engine in Reinforce, it also lost the ability to actually close out the game with the Mega Digimon Fusion into Susanamon play being gone. So what we're starting to see is Yellow play like a more security control style deck where it has to slowly chip in for damage and then try to grind out the game through attrition via healing and destruction effects. So what this means is that in larger tournament formats, we see that Yellow is often either losing to itself or losing to time, which means that it's actually a pretty poor deck to take to a large scale tournament format where the time limit is a factor. On the other hand, Blue's loss of Ice Wall is actually far less detrimental to the deck's game plan, as Ice Wall wasn't really an engine for the deck per se. It was more of just like a card that the blue player could throw in at the end of the play they were already making anyways in order to prevent their opponent from trying to play the game back at them. And the loss of the Mega Digimon Fusion ended up not being such a big deal as we see the new innovation of the Azulongmon card coming out, which is a powerful boss monster that fills that niche of a card that could come out for relatively low memory costs and present a multi-check security threat out of nowhere. All this to say, it looks like we're on the precipice of another month or two of Blue Best deck. So the question remains, what is it exactly that we can do as players to combat this blue hybrid deck? Well, I think we're going to start here in this video talking about a couple of the problem cards in the deck, how you can play around them, and then we'll go over some more general strategies on how to play your deck or change up your playstyle a little bit in order to combat the blue hybrid playstyle. We'll start by talking about the source strip engine inside the blue hybrid deck, as that seems to be one of the things that players have the most problems playing around. So this engine consists of the Sora and Joe memory tamer, as well as the BT7 core of Tommy, Kumamon, and Kori Kakumon. So we'll start by talking about the hybrid engine. So the Tommy card allows the blue player to strip 3 sources out from any Digimon, and when you combine that with the Kumamon's effect to strip another source when digivolving, and it can digivolve over a tamer, this effectively turns into a 4-card source strip, which pretty much strips the source out of any level 6 deck in the game, barring a few exceptions like Shoutmon and X Antibody, but those are kind of rogue decks, so that's not really in the equation here. And then they can follow that up with the Kori Kakumon Digivolving effect to stun out a Digimon with no source, and then with the Tommy's Inheritable effect when attacking to also stun a Digimon with no source. Then you can see how this becomes a deck that can very easily strip the source of a full Digimon, potentially stun 2 other Digimon, and then be able to apply pressure with attacking over things or just attacking into the security stack of the opponent. And then when you combine this with Sora and Joe, whose effect to gain memory procs whenever your opponent has a Digimon with no sources, you can see how the blue hybrid deck, once they get established, is frequently sitting at least 5 memory, thanks to Davis as well, the memory tamer, which lets them set to 3. And then Sora and Joe is also probably the most self-sufficient memory tamer outside of maybe Izzy and Joe in black decks, since they both have very easy to fulfill conditions as dual tamers. You can start to see how this blue hybrid deck can very easily snowball out of control into a deck that can consistently stun and source strip and then kind of feed into itself that way. So what's the best way to combat this sort of source strip strategy? Well, I think the key lies in playing around the Sora and Joe memory gainer effect, and the best way to do this is to ladder your Digivolutions. So what I mean by this is that you don't really want to commit Digimon to your board that you can't immediately digivolve over the following turn. So your play pattern is going to be, let's say you commit a level 4, a champion to the board, which will have 2 sources underneath it, so the level 3 and the level 2 egg. And then you can probably safely attack with that one, as the DP threshold of the blue hybrid deck is actually relatively low. The only thing you really need to worry about is being over 6,000, as that kind of lets you hit over the majority of the blue hybrid deck. Everything else is either the 2 Azulong Mons, 4 Beowulf Mons, maybe a Susanomon, and that's basically it. Everything else is either tamers or options. So then once you do that, the opponent is going to come back at you and strip your sources. And then if they have Sora and Joe, they're going to rely on you to not have something to be able to Digivolve over that level 4 in order to gain their memory on the following turn. So then what you can do is make sure you have your level 5 in your hand, and on the following turn, Digivolve over into level 5. And even if you can't attack with that Digimon because it potentially got stunned, you will at least be denying them the memory gain effect of Sora and Joe, which will significantly slow down the amount of plays they are allowed to make on their turn, further allowing them to keep stunning your board and attacking and doing their typical blue hybrid shenanigans. So if this is something you weren't already doing, it's really something you want to consider, is making sure you have something you can Digivolve over onto your cards that are committed onto your board. And this also means that you want to be wary of committing cards that either like to sit on the board without sources or that simply cannot be Digivolved over. So I'm talking about things like Bokomon, Sistermons, Floodgate cards like Memory Blockers, Ancient Troymon, Dynasmon, stuff like that. Even though they gain value for you as the user for sitting on the board, they also simultaneously are fueling what the blue hybrid player wants to do, is keep a sourceless Digimon out on the opponent's board which is stunned, which will fuel all of their memory gain and other effects. The next cards that I want to talk about are the bouncing cards, or the bouncing effects that the blue hybrid has access to. This is going to be Beowulfmon, which is going to be present in pretty much every blue hybrid deck variant, and also Magna Garurumon, which is only present in a few blue hybrid decks. I think most people are kind of leaning towards the Azulongmon style that does not run Koji, but then we also saw at the Digifist tournament, Lewis the Panda running the full Magna Garuru package, no Tommies, strictly indexing into Koji and utilizing the powerful Magna Garurumon bounce effect to establish tempo and board presence. So what you want to do as the player going against blue hybrid is kind of try to scope out if they're running Kojis or Magnas or not, and then once you can see what they are running, you can change your playstyle accordingly. However, for the most part, every single blue hybrid deck is going to be running the new BT7 Beowulfmon, which when attacking allows them to return a hybrid from their stack to bounce a level 4 or lower Digimon on your side of the field. What this means is that you as a player want to be very wary of leaving out stray level 4s or lowers on your side of the board, as they become bounce targets for the opponent. So what you want to try to do is that if you can see that your opponent is able to climb into a Beowulfmon, they only need 3 memory to do so on their turn by Digivolving for 2 over a Tamer, and then they can Digivolve into 1 into the Beowulfmon. Or if they already have a level 4 sitting out on their board, they can very easily turn that into a Beowulfmon as well. So that means you want to attack and gain some sort of value with your level 4s before they get bounced back to your hand by Beowulfmon's effect, or you want to be weary of hard playing a level 4 or lower from your hand if your opponent can threaten a Beowulf on their following turn, because then you will get absolutely no value out of that card, and if anything, you will be slowing yourself down and giving your opponent a huge tempo advantage that way. You also want to make sure that you can see how much ammo their Beowulfmon has, because remember, they have to return a hybrid from their stack in order to use their effect, which means for the most part, the Beowulfmon is only going to have 3 charges of that bounce effect. One for the, or I'm sorry, not 3 charges, 2 charges of the bounce effect, because they can go Kumamon into Korikakumon into Beowulfmon, and that'll give them 2 charges, or they can go Strawbybon into Kumamon or Korikakumon and then into Beowulf. They usually aren't going to have a bigger hybrid stack than that. And then if you can suss out that the opponent is playing Magna Garurumon, then you need to be wary of committing level 5s to the board, as they can then return the Beowulfmon in their stack with the Magnus effect to bounce one of your level 5s. So that is definitely something to be wary of, and the reason why you want to scope out if your opponent has Magna Garurumon in their deck or not, because getting a level 5 bounce back to your hand is a huge tempo minus for you as a player, so you definitely don't want to be falling into that trap. You also need to be wary of the Koji warp effect, as they can put another Magna Garurumon into their sources with Koji's effect, and then use the Magna Garurumon's effect to bounce back the other Magna in their sources to bounce one of your level 6s. So that's a play you need to be very wary of if you see the full Koji Magna Garurumon package. I don't think we're going to be seeing it too often, but like I said, you need to suss out what your opponent is playing, what style of blue hybrid they're running. It is a deck that is very versatile in its build, as we've seen, so you want to be very careful about how you approach the matchup when you see certain cards by your opponent being played. All right, the last thing I want to talk about, and this is going to be more of a meta or abstract approach to taking on blue hybrid deck, is understanding blue hybrid's power curve. So what I mean by this is that blue hybrid is more of a tempo or mid-range deck, which means that its power point is between turns 3 and I would say like turns 6 or 7. This is when the deck is the strongest, especially when you consider the majority of its plays revolve around its champions and its ultimates. So Cory Kakumon and Beowulfmon, along with Tommy being able to stun and bounce things. This is when the deck starts establishing its board control and also being able to get off its attacks into security while you not being able to attack back into them, which is the strength and the power of the blue hybrid deck. So what you want to do is that if your locals has a lot of blue hybrid players, or you just want to build a deck that beats blue hybrid, you want to play outside of that power curve. That means either constructing a very hyper aggressive deck that can establish its win within the first 3 to 4 turns of the game. So I'm talking about something like red hybrid or green red hybrid, something that can just go face for multiple checks really fast and be able to hit the opponent before they can start stunning you out. Or you want to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum and play a deck that is very good at attrition and being able to take it past that turn 6, turn 7 point, and then be able to take over the game from there. So obviously the classic example here is going to be yellow hybrid, which most people will agree is a very poor matchup for blue hybrid. I actually think the matchup has come closer to more 50-50, considering blue's adaptation of including the Azulongmon in their deck as a late game bomb. However, a yellow hybrid player who draws a strong aggressive hand where they can consistently turn their tamers into hybrids and then attack and then heal, that's going to be a very good hand for yellow hybrid, as well as yellow hybrids that play multiple copies of the purple Kari, which essentially allows them to have like an ice wall on their board pretty much every single turn. That's pretty strong against blue hybrid, as a lot of their effects need to attack in order to trigger, and then you can tap the Karis and then gain those memories and then prevent them from doing anything else with their turn. But like I said, yellow is actually kind of a poor deck choice, I think, for larger scale timed tournaments. And I think that's probably the reason why we are starting to see blue overcome and take over all the top tables, as it's the most consistent, it has the best win conditions, and it has the most game into pretty much every single deck as long as it's played well by the pilot. That's not to say that the deck is unstoppable or unbeatable. Obviously, the whole point of this video is how to win more against the blue hybrid deck. So I think your best option personally would be to take a red hybrid deck that is piloted very well. So don't just throw out your turn 2 Agunimon into Ancient Greymon, because oftentimes you're going to sputter out after that. Play a little bit more methodical, get in some early chips, and then try to win the game in like one turn on turn 3 or turn 4. Or you can just go full yellow 4 Karis, just stall the game out and win the game that way. Be careful of a Zulongmon though. Don't commit too many bodies to the board, otherwise you're going to get like a 3 to 4 check of Zulongmon, clearing out all your security, which is going to feel really bad for you. Alright guys, so that was just some basic tips on how to approach the matchup a little better, understanding what the blue hybrid deck can do so you're not so caught off guard by all their source stripping, stunning, and bouncing effects. So again, just to recap, things you want to keep in mind against this deck is make sure you can ladder your Digivolutions, so that way you're not stuck passing them over free memory from Sora and Joe. Yeah, you might get stunned out regardless, but at least they're not getting the extra two free memory every turn, so which will significantly slow them down. Be wary of what cards you leave out on your board, so you don't necessarily want to be leaving out Bokomons or Floodgates, or you want to be timing them very well, as those are prime targets to be stunned out and then cards that they can use to fuel their Sora and Joe. Be wary of committing level 6s too early, because again, it's very easy for your blue hybrid to strip those out and then perma-stun them from the rest of the game. So even though your level 6 might be your big boss, you want to time it in such a way that it's not just going to get immediately screwed over by a bunch of source strip effects and then just perma-stun on your board. Next, you want to be careful about your bounce targets. So you always want to be weary of leaving out level 4 lowers on your board, as Beowulfmon can always bounce us back in any blue hybrid build. So you want to try to at least climb to level 5, as that's going to be your safest bet of a Digimon that can actually stay on your board and be able to threaten another attack next turn. At least that way you'll force your opponent to have the stun instead of just having them bounce it back, and then it feels super bad. And then you also want to suss out if they're running Magna Garurumon or not, because then at that point you need to be wary about committing your level 5s as well, because then that can get bounced very easily by a Beowulf into Magna Garurumon play. So be careful of that. Check to see if they're running Kodis or not, and then if you're running the Strabimon BT4, then they can add the Magna Garurumon to your hand. They can also add it with Bokumon, so always be wary of your opponent's searches and what they're adding to your hand, or setting to the bottom of their deck as well. And then just as a general like gameplay or deck build theory is that you want to either play a super aggressive deck like Red Hybrid, or you want to play a later game attrition style deck like Yellow Hybrid, and those are probably going to have the most game into Blue Hybrids because it is a mid-range tempo deck. All right guys, so I know this one wasn't like super like, oh, play this card and you can automatically win against Blue Hybrid, because the fact of the matter is that Blue Hybrid is a strong deck. There's a reason why it's taking over all the top tables. However, it's not unbeatable. I think we're going to see some meta adaptations into this Blue Hybrid meta that we are currently facing. Maybe some faster paced Yellow Hybrids that don't lose to time, maybe a lot more Red Hybrids, or some other aggro deck may come into the meta, like, I don't know, like a purple discard aggro, or maybe something like a more aggressively styled purple loop deck. Titamon, maybe Cherubimon. I know a lot of people are hyping that deck up, so maybe that could be the answer, something that's a little bit more popular. I don't know. Time will tell. But right now, our meta is all Blue Hybrids, and that's definitely the strongest, most powerful deck. So hopefully this video gave you guys some insight on what you can do against it and what deck choices you could be making in order to improve your win rate at your locals. All right, GG's everyone. See you guys in the next video. And just really quick, I wanted to thank you guys all so much for 1,000 subscribers. That is so crazy to me. This channel started with the How to Beat Security Control video back in BT4. We've come full circle with the How to Beat Yellow Hybrids a couple weeks ago, which got an insane amount of views. I'm so thankful, and the videos will keep coming. All right, guys, later.